want to tell you a story. It was the second semester of my freshman year of college, and I went home with a buddy of mine. It's something that you'll be able to do. Once you go to college or you go into trade school, if you're able to move out of the house, you'll hopefully get some more freedoms and maybe be able to go home with a friend of yours and meet their parents and maybe stay the weekend. And that's what happened with me in this particular time, my freshman year of college. And so here I was, and my buddy lived in Panama City Beach. And so I was going to go home with him for the weekend and just spend some time with him and his family. Now, at this point in my life, God had saved me from a lifestyle of destruction. During my high school years, I did my fair share of partying, and it just about absolutely destroyed me. And at the end of my senior year, God got a hold of my heart, and I have never been the same since. It doesn't mean things have been perfect, but God got a hold of me. And so going into my freshman year of college, I was on fire for the Lord. And so here I am going to this place, which is like party central for college students. They have clubs galore. And so I was thinking to myself, that was the old life that I used to do. And I still love the adrenaline rush. And so we talked about, hey, what do we want to do? And so we decided to go to one of those places that has, it's got an arcade and it's got the go-karts and it's got putt-putt and it's got the bumper boats. But it also had, at this day and time, it had bungee jumping. And I had never done this before. I don't think my parents had ever told me no, but I had never done this before. And I was intrigued by going bungee jumping. And so now in this day and age, they really don't do a lot of bungee jumping anymore. They do this thing, it's called the sky coaster. Have you seen this? It's more of like this big swing. And they kind of strap you in and then they let it go. It's like a big rubber band, and it shoots you up in the air. But back in this time, they had bungee jumping, okay? Now, here's what you do in bungee jumping, just in case you didn't know, okay? In bungee jumping, you spend a ridiculous amount of money to jump off of something really high and not die. That's the essence of bungee jumping, okay? All right, so you get up there and they strap you in this harness. You can see this girl up here. She's got that harness all over her chest. It's going through her legs. And they literally say, whenever you're ready, go for it. And let me tell you, when you get up there, the view is amazing. You can see the putt-putt. You can see the condos. You can see the go-karts. They're going around the track. So you can see all these different things. And this whole time before you're getting ready to jump, your adrenaline is just pumping. I mean, your heart is just racing. But you know that as crazy as this fall is going to be, that everything's going to be okay because there's this huge cord tied to the platform and also tied to you that's going to keep you from hitting the concrete below and making a mess. And so that's what's, going to happen. And so my faith while I was up there was not in any of my abilities. My faith entirely, the reason people do this is because they are putting their faith in one thing and one thing only, and that is that in that cord that is attached to them and is attached to the platform. My faith was in something. My faith was in what was attached to me. And as we go into this time of talking about faith, I think that it's important for us to make sure that we almost have a little bit of discontent this morning. If you don't mind me saying that. We have a little bit of discontent when people throw around the word faith like it's, just like the way they believe. My faith and practicing my faith. And I totally understand what people are saying when they say that. But it's just not defined enough for me. There's this little bit of discontent that's in me. Because to me, that's not really faith. If you're just kind of talking about the way you believe, but you don't really talk about what you believe in, to me, that's more like luck. It's not so much faith as it is luck. Because real faith, listen to me, it's not just a belief system. It's not just a belief system, okay? People talk about practicing their faith, and in some ways, they're very ambiguous fluid or ooey gooey with, talking about faith. And really, they're almost trying to just be politically correct because they don't want to say what their faith is in, okay? And so real faith has a source. Real faith has an object. This morning, we saw Keegan and David show you this morning that they don't just have quote unquote faith, but that they have faith and that they have put their faith in Jesus Christ. And He is their lifeline. He is the object, their lifeline, and He is the one that has saved their soul. That's what they were expressing. And so in my case, it was that bungee cord. I have faith in that bungee cord to keep me safe. And so for us today, I want us to see faith says, I'm going to jump. And my wholehearted belief is in something. And in our case, it is in someone, Jesus Christ. If you've got your notes this morning, I don't have a blank for you to write out of the gate, but I do want you to see that I've put this on there, and I would encourage you to just look at this with me. I can't tell you how true this statement is. Faith is not just mere belief, but it is an active trust in Christ's power and His promises. You see, people can believe in things all the time that simply are not true. Let's take, for example, bungee jumping. What if someone were to say, well, you really know, I don't believe in gravity. Oh, you don't? Well, I have news for you. If you jump off something very high, whether you believe in it or not, even though it's invisible, it is there. Some people might say that, well, from my perspective, I can't see things from an outside perspective. I've never been in a spaceship. I've never done, anything higher than a plane ride. You know what? I don't know if I believe that the earth is round. Maybe they say that the earth is flat. Based on my perception, I think the earth is flat. Okay, well, you can believe that all day long, but I guarantee you, if you get in a plane and you keep going from east, if you keep going east, you will eventually wind up in the west. You will be able to see these things. Some people will say that, or they believe that eating only candy is a healthy lifestyle. Now, right now, we're in the world's finest chocolate fundraiser, and so there's a tendency for me to say, go with it. But that's not the truth. If you eat only candy as your lifestyle and you think that that's healthy, eventually you're going to get a loud wake-up call and you might be in the doctor's office. Or let's talk about some things spiritually. You can believe that by merely being a good person, that you will go to heaven. Maybe you were told that, maybe you were taught that, but the Bible, our source, doesn't teach that. And there's many things in our life that are invisible that we cannot see, but we know that they are there. Genuine faith says this: it is trusting in something substantial. Even though I can't see gravity, I know it's there. Even though I can't see that, even from this perspective, that the earth is round, I know that it is. Even though I can't see God, I didn't see the miracles that Jesus did. Even though I didn't see Jesus' death, burial, or resurrection, I know that it's true, and I know that it's the only way that I can be saved from my sin. So when someone talks to you about merely having faith or practicing faith, I want you to be a little discontent with that answer. You don't have to get onto them or anything like that. Maybe you just understand where they are. But just be a little discontent with that answer, because faith isn't just merely a belief. There is an object to that faith. Today, I want to share with you a story from our text in Matthew chapter 8. We're going to start right here in verse 5 of a man who had incredible faith. And he wasn't Jewish like the people that Jesus went to and preached to. He was a man who, in many cases, was shunned by the population in that area. But he had incredible faith, and I think that it's worthwhile to read his story. So starting right here in verse 5, it says, when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home and he's paralyzed and he's in terrible suffering. In verse 7, it says, Jesus said to him, I will go and heal him. Now, your Bible this morning, there's different translations. It's okay. The general way, that translation is really the same thing. Some of your Bibles may actually have this in the form of a question. Jesus may say, shall I go heal him? Okay. The version that I'm using says, I will go and heal him. It's the same idea. Jesus says, okay, I'll go. But look at what happens in verse 8. The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. Just say the word. Just say the word, and my servant will be healed. And then he kind of explains it. Verse 9, he says, for I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this soldier, go, and he goes. I tell this soldier, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. Look at what happens with Jesus in verse 10. When Jesus heard this, he was astonished. And he said to those following him, I tell you the truth, I haven't found anyone in Israel with such great faith. Not one person. Not one person in Israel. Not one person in the Jewish community with such great faith. Verse 11, I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. In other words, he's saying that there's going to be all kinds of people that aren't Jewish, that are going to be at the table of heaven and that have given their lives to Christ, and they'll be there in the kingdom of heaven. In verse 12, it says, but the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into darkness. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Verse 13, then Jesus said to the centurion, go, it will be done just as you believed it would. And his servant, the centurion's servant, was healed at that very hour. Jesus didn't have to go and touch him. I mean, at this point in time, Jesus has been revealing his power. He has been revealing that he is God. He has been preaching with authority. He's been preaching with miracles and powerful signs. He's been healing the sick. If you've got your Bible open, you may see verses 1 through 4 right there in chapter 8, that he heals a man who's got leprosy. And he literally touches the man with leprosy. A major no-no, because that man was contagious. But here, Jesus is God, and so he's able to touch him, and Jesus is healing. And so in most of these moments, Jesus is actually on the scene. He's touching someone. He's speaking directly to them. Later on, we're going to see him cast out demons and raise the dead. We're going to see him do it more than once. And so the centurion has heard about all these incredible things that Jesus has been doing. And so he's been hearing about this. And I want us to say, you know what? If we want to imitate this faith that the centurion has, if we want to pass the faith test, I think that there's some things that we can learn from this. And so I want to encourage you, go ahead and have your notes out, because the first thing that we're going to write down is that genuine faith initiates Jesus's aid. Genuine faith initiates Jesus's aid. If you want God's help, you have to seek him out. No one knows you better than no one knows you better. Jesus knows you better than you know yourself. Let me just kind of give you an example. He knows the amount of hairs that are on your head, or in some of your cases that are not on your head. Jesus knows you better than you know yourself. God knows you better than you know yourself. And so you think to yourself, okay, well then why do I have to initiate? Why do I have to go to God? He knows what's going on in He knows my problems. He knows my anxieties. He knows the things that I need. He knows my finances right now. He knows that I'm looking for a job. He knows that my marriage is broken. He knows that my child is wayward. He knows all these things. Why does God want me to go to Him? Because that's what genuine faith does. It initiates Jesus's aid. Because He knows about everything about you. He knows your failures. He knows your successes. He knows your wants. He knows your needs. But that's not faith. Faith comes to Jesus. In fact, we'll put this up here on the screen. You might even write down the reference this morning. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 13. What does it say? He tells Jeremiah, you will seek me and find me. But there is a stipulation that I've got underlined up here on the screen. The stipulation is you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Do you see it? Well, let's go to the New Testament. James chapter 4, verse 2, the second part of verse 2. He says this, hey guys, you do not have because you do not ask God. Do you see it? It's all over the Bible. If you want to have faith, you got to initiate it. God is waiting on you to initiate. But Pastor Dan, I just don't get it. God knows my needs. Why doesn't He just do something? Because ladies and gentlemen, it is a faith test. Every opportunity, every day is a faith test, giving you the opportunity to grow. Remember, God cares more about your character than He does your comfort. And every day is an opportunity for you to grow in Him. And so He wants you to have some faith involved. And when you initiate the way that the centurion did, you are proving that you trust Him. And He is most pleased and most proud of you when you express that trust. Remember what Mr. Riggs preached on several weeks ago? Without faith, it's impossible to please God. God is giving you an opportunity to please Him. So yeah, the finances are tight. Initiate with God. God, I need your help. Yeah, your marriage is in turmoil. Initiate with God. Either pray together or pray by yourself. You've got children in here. You got grandchildren in here. You better be praying for them, whether they're living wayward or whether they're living close to Jesus. Pray for them every day. You initiate with God. This is a daily walk with God that you've got to initiate. You feel far from God? Sometimes I do. Have you initiated with Him? There's a second reason that I want to move really quickly that God wants us to ask. It's because God knows how prone we are to fix things ourselves. Now, there is a common thing that is going on in our day and age called DIY. Do you know what DIY is? Do it yourself. You go to Home Depot, DIY, okay? Now, here's the deal about doing it yourself, okay? If you've ever done something yourself, and I've done many things myself, but here, let me just kind of let you in a moment of vulnerability here. I have noticed that when I tend to do things myself, that means that I can also mess them up all by myself. Perhaps you have been there. But we live in this DIY, do-it-yourself day and age. The centurion could have taken things into his own hands. He could have taken his servant to doctor after doctor. You see, here's what I find is that so many Christians, they use God almost as their last resort rather than their first resort. It's our pride. It's our pride that says, God, I've got this. Do it yourself. But if I can't do it myself, then I'll come back to you. God shouldn't be our last option. God should be our first option. And in God's grace, so many times He will let us get to the end of our rope because at that point we have no other place to go but to Him. And I'm telling you that when we express our faith, maybe this is a little deep, but we are using the currency of heaven. We don't use money in heaven. We don't use that. But when we express our faith, faith is the currency of heaven. Grab that concept. Second thing that I want you to write down is that genuine faith acknowledges Jesus' authority. This is so important. So write that down. Genuine faith acknowledges Jesus' authority. Now, it's at this point that I want to address something, especially to the men that are here in the room, okay? This centurion is a man's man. He is a warrior. Not only is he a warrior, he is a leader of warriors. He is responsible. He has 100 guys under his care. Centurion, we use that word century to talk about 100 years. Centurion, so he has 100 soldiers, 100 warriors under him. And in addition to this, clearly from the passage, he also has other servants and caretakers. This would be the equivalent of you, perhaps at your job or perhaps in your life, if you had the responsibility of 100 employees plus under you. The difference is between him and you is that his 100 employees are trained killers. He is a man's man. And he comes to Jesus saying, Lord. And you might gloss over that, or we might skip over that. But let's not miss that. Look up here on the screen. He says, Jesus said to him, I'll go and heal him. The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. He does not say, sir. He does not say, teacher. He doesn't say reverend. He doesn't say pastor. He doesn't say rabbi. He doesn't say doctor. He comes to him and he is admitting that Jesus is the master and the Lord. A man's man says, you're my Lord. Don't miss that, guys. It is not weakness to have Jesus as your Lord. It is strength to have Jesus as your Lord. And he is acknowledging Jesus' authority. And then he goes on to say, he really dives into this. He says, I myself am a man under authority. He said, I'm a centurion, but there's a general over me. But then I tell my guys, I tell my soldiers, I tell them, hey, you go, and they go. I tell them what to do, and they do it. I tell them, hey, come here. And they come. He says, then I've got these servants and caretakers. And I tell my servants, you got to go do this. And he's like, they do it. And so here's what he's saying. He's saying that Lord, you have the authority the same way that I have been given a level of authority. And this paralysis, you don't have to come to my home. I don't deserve to have you come to my home. All you got to do is speak it the same way I can tell these guys what to do. All you do is you got to speak to that paralysis and it'll leave. And so many times we come to God and our heart isn't right. We treat Him like we're in charge. We treat Him like we know what's going on. We just need His help. No, we go to Him humbly. We understand His position. My undergraduate degree is a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. And so I had to take so many classes on behavior. I had to take so many classes on the science of the mind and all those different things. And all of this, if you go into higher education in this day and age, and I'm passionate about this, I really am. If you go into higher education, colleges in this day and age, they are filled with people and teachers who are so godless and they are so anti-God. And for the longest time, I've wondered, why do they have no faith? Why are they so violently antagonistic to the things of God, to Christianity in particular? Why is it so often in higher education that is the case? And the reason is, the second that you acknowledge that there is a God, the second you acknowledge that there's a God, you are acknowledging that there is a higher authority than you. And if you eliminate God and His authority, then you get to do what you want. Do you see it? That's why so often in higher education, that's why in all these secular circles, they're eliminating God, is because they don't want to be under God's authority. But if we have genuine faith, we'll find ourselves under His authority. Number 3, genuine faith attracts Jesus' attention. Genuine faith attracts Jesus' attention. While you're writing that down, I want you to think of some of the emotions that you know that Jesus has had throughout the New Testament, throughout the Gospels. We see the emotions of Jesus. Think about the story of Lazarus. His friend Lazarus has died. He comes on the scene after Lazarus has died. His friends, Mary and Martha, are there. And they're going, if you were just here, if you had just been here, then this wouldn't have happened. And they're crying, and all their friends are around them crying. And Jesus sees them, and with compassion, He begins to cry too. That's where we have the shortest verse in the Bible, that Jesus wept. We see the emotions of Jesus. We see Jesus get angry. Do you remember that? We see Jesus get angry. He goes into the temple and people are exchanging money and they are selling animals and they use it as like this higher purpose. Oh, well, you need to give this animal for a sacrifice and you've got this foreign money. You need to exchange that for our money here so that you can give your offering, all that kind of thing. But they were marking it up and they were lining their pockets with people and they were using worship as the way to do it. It was sick. And so Jesus walks in and we see the emotions of Jesus, righteous anger. Okay, let's make sure we talk about that. He wasn't just angry and, sinful anger, righteous anger. And so in his righteous anger, he flips the tables. He said, you shouldn't be doing this in God's house. God's house should be called a house of prayer. So all throughout the scriptures, we're seeing the emotions of Jesus, but don't miss this. What does it take to amaze Jesus? What does it take to make God go, wow? What does it take from you? Let's look at what it says in verse 10. When Jesus heard this, what the centurion has said, don't miss it. I got it underlined up here. He was astonished. What does it take to astonish Jesus? Great faith. When you have great faith, the emotions of God Himself are activated and He goes, wow. I don't know about you, but I want to make Jesus go, wow. It's not our righteousness that makes Jesus go, wow. Only He's perfectly righteous. It's not your abilities or your skill set that makes God go, wow. He's the one that gave you those gifts and those skill sets anyway. It's not your money because He owns everything, the cattle on 1,000 hills. The one thing that makes Jesus go, wow, is a faith that says this: I believe you can do the impossible and I trust you completely to handle it. That's the type of faith that makes Jesus go, wow. My youngest daughter loves to be held, just loves to be held. We could be getting ready to go to the car. We're getting ready to go somewhere. And we're getting ready to walk out my front door to 20 steps to the car. And she will hold her arms up and say, hold me. And there are so many times I'm like, we got 20 steps, girl. Come on. You can handle this. But I look at those times and I say, one day you're going to be a big girl. And I'm not going to be able to hold you anymore. And so most of the time that she holds her arms up, whether we got 5 steps to go or whether we got 500 steps to go, she says, hold me. And I said, baby, come here, and I'll hold her. Because I realize these days are limited. One day she's going to be 20 years old, and she asked me to hold her then. It's going to be a little weird. It's going to be a little awkward. She's not going to be able to look at me anymore and say, Daddy, pick me up. Why does she ask me to do that? Because she knows that her daddy is strong enough. She knows that her daddy is going to protect her. She knows that her daddy is going to comfort her. And let me tell you something, just from daddy's perspective, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. There is no feeling in the world when a child says, even with their actions or their arms or whatever, when they trust you, and they know that you have the responsibility, you have the love, you have the devotion. There's no feeling like it. I highly suggest it. God is no different. There is nothing that warms and wows the heart of God like when you and I, by faith, show Him how much we trust Him. It's how we put our hands up and say, God, I need you to hold me in this situation. God, the doctors have tried everything, and I just need you to hold me. God, I've been laid off, and I just need you to hold me. God, things are going well in my life, but I just feel distant from you. I need you to hold me. Do you see it? It's all by faith. Why do you think we lift our hands in worship? What's what? We're raising our hand. What are we doing? We're saying, God, hold me. By faith, hold me. That's what that means. And there's nothing that attracts Jesus' attention quite like genuine faith. Last thing. as we get ready to close. Genuine faith, number 4, receives Jesus' answer. Number 4, receives Jesus' answer. The centurion got an answer, didn't he? When Jesus said to the centurion, look right here in verse 13, when Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, it will be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that very hour. Now, I want to make sure you understand something here. Just because you ask God for something doesn't mean that He's going to always give it to you. Let me make sure. Notice that I said that genuine faith receives an answer. Okay? I didn't say genuine faith always gets what you want. It receives an answer. Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is wait. And we don't like to wait, but genuine faith always receives an answer. God always answers genuine faith. Some of you may be in here today and you say, "Pastor Dan, every time I pray, it feels like my prayers are bouncing off the ceiling and they're just coming back and hitting me." And I believe that He's looking at you today and He said, don't give up. You don't put your faith in how you feel. You don't put your faith in how you feel. You put your faith in Him. Back in 2020, during the time of COVID, churches were shutting down. And some churches just shut all the way down. Others, they went exclusively to online or, whatever. And Miss Mallory, who's in here today, was our preschool director during that time. And she was over at our house one day, and she looks at me and she says, "Did you know this, you remember this?" She said, "Did you know that you can get online and you can buy these transmitters? And you can actually run your sound through a transmitter." And she said, even though we're not having church and we're pumping things out online, she said, "What if we got everybody together in the parking lot and they can stay in their car, they can roll up their windows so nobody coughs on anybody, And so, they can roll up their windows and we can transmit our worship service, music, preaching, and all. We can transmit it. We'll give them the radio station and they can just transmit it right to their radio and everyone will be able to listen." Some of y'all over here, raise your hand. Do you remember us doing that? Yeah. Wasn't that fun? I really enjoyed, I didn't enjoy COVID, but I enjoyed those days, being able to get out there and do that. If you've never seen this, maybe you're kind of new. We got a few pictures that I think we can kind of rotate through up there. So folks were just getting in their cars and we just had a great time. We would play it out over the radio. But here's the deal. If you didn't have a radio or you didn't turn on your radio, you weren't able to receive the message. You weren't able to receive it. Because only by having a radio were you able to pick up this invisible signal. Listen to me. In essence, that radio was the mechanism that took the invisible, unheard signal and turned it so that our members could hear it and receive it. Ladies and gentlemen, our faith in Jesus Christ is like that radio. It takes what is invisible, what you cannot see, and it is the mechanism. Faith is the mechanism that allows you to receive the invisible from a very real God. But in order to receive the signal, you've got to activate the radio. In order for you to receive from God, you've got to activate your faith in Him. In order to receive from Jesus, you've got to have faith in Christ. Otherwise, there will be nothing but spiritual silence in your life. So, we initiate Jesus' aid. We acknowledge Jesus' authority. We attract Jesus' attention. And we receive Jesus' answer.